Money in your 70s. Martin McGrath is joining me today, and you're calling this decade optimise, simplify, and enjoy, Martin.
That last one, really enjoy life.
Yeah, so you'd have a handful of people that you see that are in their 70s or at least late 60s and, looking at 70s and all that stuff. Just a question without any notice, if you did get a client that it's already in their 70s, what are they mainly looking to achieve?
I think simplifying in that respect is often a simplification of stuff. Often at that point, perhaps where you maybe feel like you're less in the accumulation phase, but it's at that point you're like, I've now got this situation or these affairs. Maybe, hopefully it's set up well within super and pension phase, usually not working. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm 71, I've just inherited some more money from mum or dad who passed away in their 90s. Usually it is that simplification of affairs. Maybe am I worried about running out? Often it's less. I know I've got enough to get me by, and I've also realised I've probably got too much. When do I start thinking about gifting? Are my affairs set up the right way for the next generation? What do I need to optimise? And I think the other good thing is, which we'll touch on today, 4 or 5 years ago, once you're 70, you couldn't do much more strategic-wise, whereas now you still can.
Yeah.
So whether you're 70 up to 75 and beyond that, there's still some planning elements to consider. And so it's about perhaps, again, that probably less maybe technical, but putting money into super to save tax, but definitely, I suppose, some optimising your situation for you and for future generations.
So this is Money in Your 70s. The last 2 weeks we've covered 2 other decades, 50s and 60s. And I'll say again, there will be elements of each decade that can be cross-applied to whatever age you're at. If you are listening in your 30s now, awesome. You are really dialed in and you are looking forward. If you're in your 40s, awesome. Because all the stuff that we talk about, it could be good for you to understand if you've got parents in their 70s.
Yep.
If you've got uncles and aunts or grandparents. So this is just a good resource. And we've had a lot of fun preparing this, Martin.
And
I think you had some fun.
Let's call this even the over 70s. If you're 80 or 90 and listening to this, or 100 on YouTube and watching, a lot of this stuff will still be applicable. So this is, I suppose, the 70s plus episode as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's get into it.
This is a podcast that will help you plan and execute one of the biggest moments in your life. That's retirement. You'll learn how to set up your finances in a way that benefits you, your lifestyle goals, and keeps you in the know within this complex world of money and investing. Your host is Glen James, former financial advisor, author, and host of the popular Money, Money, Money podcast. Glen is joined by experts in various fields around the topic of retirement in Australia. Any advice in this podcast is of a general nature. Full details are in the show notes of this episode. You only retire once, so retire right.
All right. If you are joining us on YouTube, we do have a slide deck just with the bullet points. If you're driving along or on the mower and you're not watching on YouTube, you can listen along. There's no spreadsheets or highly technical stuff
Detailed
in this
numbers,
in this episode, but we'll get straight to it right now. Money in your 70s, look out. Okay. Whoops. Didn't turn that off. Here we go. Okay. We kind of ended on this in the 60s around preparing for government entitlements. You've really now stepped into this. Well, you're 70, you're well and truly into that whole world because you're over 67. There's probably a higher chance that you have stopped working or are about to stop work. So talk us through optimising government entitlements and around that type of planning.
Yeah, agreed. So, if you haven't listened to the last one, go back and listen. It was quality as always. I think in 2 parts, Centrelink entitlements are a moving and evolving element. The rules do change, but also your circumstances change. Maybe at 67 you weren't eligible, but at 72 you are. So that's relevant, or vice versa. At 67 you weren't, but all of a sudden at 72 you've received an inheritance and now you're above the threshold. We need to review and assess that. But what I want to add to that layer is, I suppose, some more optimizing and using some extra strategies. So we touched on a little bit last time, gifting. Gifting again can be a continual process. So as I mentioned, there is no limit on the amount that you gift. It's just how Centrelink interpreted that, which is up to $10,000 a year for 3 to 5 years is not counted. Anything above is deemed only for a period of 5 years. So even if you do realise you've got some excess assets and you give that away at 70, by the time you get to 75, Centrelink are no longer assessing that. A couple of things that may then start to come into play if you want try and optimise it. You're on a part pension, but you'd like to get a little bit more. There are some things out there that are referred to as funeral bonds. And I think there is an episode of a bit of a deep dive on funeral bonds, but basically that's allowing you to put a certain amount of money. There's a cap, and the cap does change. At the moment, it's around $15,000. It does change every year. Of your money or investments or super into this bond, that's still invested and ticking along like a super fund would be. It's accessible to go towards your funeral, but Centrelink do not count that as an asset. So if we do that each for a couple, there's some ways there that we can kind of get some money off.
Is there
the
a
Centrelink
maximum
radar.
limit that you can have in a funeral bond?
No, it's about how much you're allowed to put into it. If it grows beyond that.
That's what I mean. So is there a maximum application amount?
Yeah, so 15,500 I think is the limit at the time of recording,
Per
but
person.
that does change per person.
Yeah, because the immediate thing for me was like, let's throw $1 million in the funeral bond, pay 15 grand for a funeral, and the estate can get this money.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea, but no. So that's how much you're allowed to put in. Once it's in there, if it grows, fine, you're not penalised. But no, you can't top up or put more than that into that. That is per person. And like you just said, that $1 million, well, what happens if my funeral costs less than that? It's refundable to the estate.
Yeah. Okay, so we can pretty much have 31 grand for a couple removed from Centrelink. And again, this is if you are 67, you can do this.
Yeah.
But this is like really, you're in your 70s now. Let's really try and optimise.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, is it something worthwhile to look at? Yes. Are there some limitations? Yes. If you decide you want to take that out for a car or holiday, you can't. So we want to put that in on the basis of, hey, I know I've got enough here. I'm not going to run out. And I'm in my 70s or my late 70s or early 80s. I know that's going to be on the radar. I want to make sure that my family doesn't have to pay for it. So hold on, you're telling me I can prepay for it now, plus I'll actually get a bit more while I'm alive? Yeah, you can.
Question, are prepaid funerals seen as the same in terms of Centrelink?
It depends.
Right.
It depends. The technical definition, some of them are not.
Right.
Some of them do come under the same rules. Whether you do that directly with the funeral home, whether you do that with the plot, etc., there are ways that can be structured, yes, and there are also ways that can be structured that are not.
Just on that, my immediate thought would be you wouldn't want to do a prepaid funeral. You would want to do the funeral bond. Go with me, Martin.
I know where I'm going, but I'll see where you go.
Yeah, you're going to hell. Yeah. If I prepaid a $15,000 funeral today, and in 10 years' time, well, I paid $15,000, but funerals are now worth $20,000, I might not be able to get the funeral I wanted in the future. But at least if I've got $15,500 in a funeral bond that's invested,
Keeping pace with
it's
inflation.
at least growing as well.
Yep.
Is that a valid thing?
That was one of the two that I was thinking of.
And the other one that I was going, I'll see if I can guess, if the funeral home goes under, or is it kept in a bond trust account? It's probably kept in a trust account. I haven't done these for years.
No, I think that's where it depends. If it's a good one that's covered, then it would be more. I was thinking a little bit around, you may decide in the end, or your family may decide not to go with that provider.
Yes.
A funeral bond that they can decide. You can decide which provider. If you prepay it with company X, and you're right, the company X goes out of business.
I mean, if you're a funeral provider and you go out of business, it's not because business is bad.
No, it's a pretty regular clientele. But yeah,
not much repeat business from the same person. But
you might move away. The family move away. I prepaid a funeral in this suburb.
Yeah,
but now I live
Ipswich, and now I'm in
the other
Melbourne.
state, and they don't have. So that were the two things. One, 100%. Investing in a funeral bond, it keeps pace with inflation. You can still pick the underlying investments. You can be really aggressive. You can be really conservative.
Yeah.
But then also,
I mean, the downside there, if you die next Thursday and the market tanks, your prepaid funeral might be less
than what you put in for.
Your bond might be less than what you put in for.
Yeah, but you won't be around to feel that pain.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing is like portability as such is that your estate can decide who to use and what package to pick and those kind of things.
On the prepaid funeral thing and funeral bond thing, I'm kind of on the view that, I mean, you would only do it, I think, for two reasons. One, to hide $31,000 from Centrelink. Two, to have that money quarantined for your family. I don't think you would do it for any other reason, would you? Because if you've got other assets or the house, like the funeral, unless you have, what I'm trying to say, if you know that your family do not have the means, because the funeral home are going to want their 10 grand or whatever, they don't have the means to cash flow that until the estate's settled and paid out.
Which sometimes can be released from the estate early, but
Yes.
and talking to helping lots of people in their 70s and 80s, that is one of the things. If I just want to know that that's sorted and one less burden, etc. And so having that prepaid is that peace of mind. But yeah, actually the benefit of going, hold on, if I put 10,000 into that, I'm getting an extra $30 a fortnight as a couple for the rest of my life. So that's 30,000. That could be $2,000 a year of extra pension.
Yeah.
And it's still invested, ticking along, and a peace of mind knowing your estate's got that looked after, but also you're getting an extra pension per fortnight. That can be pretty powerful.
So, I mean,
and it's not a have to do, and it's a little win, but that's what we're trying to optimize. Am I rushing out and doing that at 65? Probably not. But if I'm working with a client at 75 and we know that they're not going to run out of cash and we're just trying to get a little bit extra, that's on the table. And similarly, before we move on from government pensions, annuities or lifetime income streams, which is where you can use a certain amount of capital, purchase an annuity. The way that is assessed for Centrelink, if it is a lifetime annuity, is that it's not assessed as the full capital you put into it. Typically, the day you set that up, Centrelink will only assess 60% of the money you've put into that annuity.
we will flag and do another dedicated annuities Q&A maybe next time you're up here because I think it's a really good topic.
Yep.
Annuities are good. Any other rounding points here?
No, and then other than, again, seniors health card. So if you're 71 and you to have too much in assets to get the age pension, make sure you're getting the seniors healthcare card. Make sure you review the entitlements because the thresholds do change. I went to the Centrelink office when I was 68 and they said I had too much. Make sure you revisit that because the thresholds do go up fairly frequently and or vice versa. Because you applied when you were 68, but all of a sudden you've downsized home, received an inheritance, and now you've got a lot more money, you may still be getting a pension that you're maybe not entitled to, and at some point that's going to catch up with you and give you a scary adjustment.
Yeah, 100%. All right, second point, managing pension income streams. What do you mean by manage pension income streams?
So putting the annuities to the side, most people would have a lot of their super in what's called an account-based pension. So account-based pensions are what you move into, your super into once you've stopped working and you're in pension phase. There is a minimum every year, and between the age of 60 and 65, that's 4%. Between 65 and 75, which is part of today's episode, it's 5%, and then it continues to increase every year.
Up to 10% at 90 plus or something?
14%.
14, yes.
At 95 plus. So
wow.
we'll worry about that when we both get there.
Yeah.
That's the minimum. It's not the maximum. And it might be that you're members of a couple. So what I've got of this is just, again, not a negative, but it's ongoing management of that of going, okay, well now I'm 76. The good news is the super fund will automatically adjust that for you. It might be that your spouse is 76 and you're 74. Why are we getting different pension amounts? That's the reason. If your portfolio has gone down, then they might pay you less next year, the minimum, but you can decide, I want more than the minimum. So it's about making more sure, I suppose, that that's being massaged appropriately. And also, I suppose, that reminder, if you're drawing too little, you're allowed to take more. But also vice versa. If for a period of time you were spending lots of money and we were taking out 9% a year because we're doing lots of travels in our 60s and now we've decided we're traveling less, we're still getting paid a $8,000 a month pension. We're only spending $5,000 and we're saving $3,000 a month into an interest-bearing account. Perhaps we contact the super fund and say, hey, can you drop my pension for the next couple of years because I don't need as much? You've got that power to manage that and adjust that when you need to.
Just on that, with the minimum, there's a repeat question that you see pop up every now and again. If I'm retired and I have my super, do I have to turn it into an account-based pension? This could be someone who has their super account. They might have 3 investment properties that they own outright with their house. The answer is no, you don't have to. You don't have to do anything. But there could be some other reasons that you would.
Yeah.
And if you did have to move it into an account-based pension, you might elect that you'll take the minimum payment once yearly on the 30th of June.
Yeah.
So do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's fair. For tax reasons, you would typically want to.
And that's not because of anything other than the tax rate of those assets
Within
is
those
0%.
Yeah.
And you'll just take the yearly minimum.
You take that paid out, and then I think we've got a slide coming up. Maybe that's part of your recontribution strategy, and you put that money back in.
Yeah.
But I think that's the theme: is that you might have set that up at 65, and all of it's 72. You realize, do I have any control to change that? Yes, you've got control.
And I think just on this minimum poured drawdown, for those who do have a self-managed super fund, even if that's in pension phase, you want to make sure your liquidity's there. Like the government, they don't care. If you have $1 million sitting there in cash, they want their 5% minimum that year. Or if you've got $1 million in property with no cash.
Yeah.
I mean, you do have a requirement as the trustee of your self-managed super fund to make sure there is liquidity, et cetera, but it's just a thing to note.
And the penalty of missing that is significant for an SMSF.
Point 3, here we go. Consolidate and simplify finances. What do you mean by that, Martin?
I think it's probably, and again, on the future estate planning side, but it might be that for certain reasons, I had a pension, I started at 62, but I kept my accumulation open while I was still working. So there was 30 grand in there and I've just never touched it. I've left that ticking along. Well, do I just leave it in an accumulation fund now? I've never worried about it. I thought I might go back to work and I've never done that. Well, maybe no. Maybe you do start a pension. Maybe you take a lump sum withdrawal out. So there's, I suppose, sometimes some simplification of pension accounts. There are some reasons why you wouldn't, and that is mixing the taxable and the tax-free components, but we might leave that to the side for
Remember
1
we
second.
got into the weeds on that episode and some people are like, I turned it off, it was too nerdy.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, sorry, we won't get that
I would
nerdy.
appreciate that. And I've got there, sell down complex or maybe time-consuming assets. So it might be, before I get to the time-consuming stuff, the simple stuff. I've got those, IAG shares or any certain stock, or I've got these kind of shares hanging around I've just had that are worth $3,000 or $2,000 or $400. And if you've, by the time of 78, you haven't done anything with those investments, you're probably not doing much with that. And then the idea of just simplifying that, it's less to update and report to Centrelink every year. Perhaps it's less for your estate to manage down the track. If you want to keep the shares, maybe you just gift them to your kids now and in specie them to your kids. But usually we would try and go, before you had 7 different bank accounts with 4 different banks and you had these shares here and those were in joint names and that was under an SRN because you inherited them from your uncle. Perhaps let's try and simplify some of those affairs for your own benefit, but also for other parties.
If you did have, the old IAG shares and you in-specied them to a friend or relative or whatever, that would still be deemed as a gift,
It
the
would
value.
be. Yeah. So if it's less than 10,000 and you haven't done anything else, you'd be fine. But if it's more, time-consuming assets, rental properties, again, it might be that holiday home you've had for many years or that rental property that's ticking along and you realise that, okay, it's done its dash and I've had a chat with both the kids and neither of them really want to keep it.
Or, the retaining wall needs replacing and you just don't want the drama of $15,000 and
cash flow and liquidity.
all that crap.
And so perhaps it's simplification in that manner. It's much easier to gift $1 million of cash than it is to gift a rental property with inherited cost base, etc. And then the window there we've kind of mentioned there is that your final contributions into super are up until the age of 75.
Yeah.
So depending on when you're listening to this, you can keep money into super till 75. So whether I've sold those shares and cashed in those shares for 80,000, I can top up my super fund with those. Yes, you can. I've sold that rental property between myself and my partner. We've got $500,000 or $600,000 left from that rental property. You can put that in as a non-concessional. We've written on there also the downsides are in addition to that. You can do that up until the age of 75 and beyond the age of 75. So not trying to confuse anyone there. That one is allowable beyond that point, but often it might be a physical house downsize is typically before you're reaching your 80s. But if you're listening to this, you can still do it beyond the age of 75 as well.
Yeah, lots to consider there. We'll be back right after this to round it off with the next couple of points.
Strategy points.
If you're after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. If you would like help based on your own personal situation, head over to retireright.com.au, click Get Help, and we'd be happy to introduce you to one of our trusted professionals. Our panel of vetted financial advisors and mortgage brokers work with people all over Australia, so they can connect with you wherever you are. That's retireright.com.au and click Get Help.
Okay, we're back. Hey, if you want to continue the discussion in the Facebook group, just put, when you search Retire Right on Facebook, you'll see that there's a group there. You'll click join, put, where did you hear about this podcast? I'll ask you that. I need you to put, or where did you hear about this group? I need you to put, I heard Glen and Martin on the podcast. If you put our names, we'll 100% know you are not spam. And just a timely reminder, hey, if you are new to this podcast, welcome. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching if you're on YouTube. And we would really appreciate if you help us grow the good things that we're trying to do here. Share this episode on Apple, Spotify, or the YouTube episode to a friend or family member. Thank you so much. Martin, the next point on our magical list, number 4, consider a re-contribution strategy. Talk dirty to me.
Yeah, so this is back to connecting to that. There's a window now up until the age of 75, and this deserved its own little heading because it's talked about often, and how do I reduce those death taxes to the kids? So your super fund behind the scenes have components. They've got taxable elements and tax-free components. Your job is to spend and enjoy your super in your lifetime. But if there's the chance that you may not spend that in your lifetime and it's passed on to adult children, there can be a tax liability that potentially comes with that. How do we reduce or eliminate that? There is a window up to the age of 75 where with certain thresholds you can take money out of super tax-free, use that money to then recontribute, hence the word recontribute, back into super. And what that does is it turns the taxable components into the tax-free components, and therefore likely saving or reducing, if not completely saving, the tax payable to children upon those. So it's I suppose largely an estate planning element. There used to be sometimes some impact on Centrelink, and that might be that little warning or alert. Sometimes it can improve your Centrelink outcomes. Sometimes it can actually, if you've got a really old type of pension, reduce your Centrelink entitlements. So make sure you double check that or speak with an advisor about that. But this free contribution strategy, you may not have started that in your 50s or 60s, and now in your 70s, you've got a window up until the age of 75 to look to implement that.
Anything else on the re-contribution strategy? I think it's probably important to note, Martin, is it worth talking about the downsizer in this slide deck?
We can, get because I don't think we've got that next.
No, we don't.
As mentioned, this is available to the age of 75. This is a non-concessional. In addition to this, over 75 or anyway over the age of 55, if you downsize your home, you're allowed to put up to $300,000 per person into super tax-free. The rules are, it's got to be the sale of a home that you've lived in. Normally it's the home you've lived in, but in certain circumstances it can be an investment property if you've lived in it.
And if you've owned it for more than 10 years.
So point number 2, you need to have owned it for more than 10 years.
Right.
You don't need to have lived in it for more than 10 years. You need to have owned it for more than 10 years.
Lived in it for 10 minutes even.
Yeah, as long as you didn't live anywhere else in those 10 minutes, then yes. And you've got to put the money in within 90 days of settlement. So those 3 items have to be ticked. $300,000 per person. It's a special type of contribution. It's got a special ATO form that needs to go with it. Often your super fund has a special BPay detail or transfer detail for it to go into. So it's important to plan correctly when you're doing this. Downsize a contribution can be done with no age limit, and hence why it's the Over 70's podcast, because you can do it. I did a downsize a few years ago for an 89-year-old. She put $300,000 into super tax-free.
Love that. Do you reckon it's just a loophole that they were just like, yeah, whatever, don't need to close it? It was missed in the legislation, or they just didn't care because there was probably going to be less people that would use it?
Yeah, I think it's weird. Yeah, probably it didn't care. I think the thing that, again, good for planning is that if you're 74, you're allowed to do a $300,000 downsizer and a $360,000 non-concessional bring forward. So that's $660,000 into super tax free. As a couple, that's $1.32 million. That's a fair bit of money to move in tax free into super.
Yeah.
And then in turn, that type of contribution will be tax free to the estate.
Yeah.
So there's some exciting planning opportunities there at all ages.
Awesome. All right. Point 5, review and update your estate planning. Hey, we did touch on this last episode, but again, the older that we get, the closer we are to death, believe it or not. And that sounds odd to say, but we like to live in reality here and with our plans. So, yeah, I think this is probably more, it's important, but it's more important if you have blended family, if you have an estranged cat or something like that, and is that cat going to come and meow and try and go the other cats that you're friendly with, that you talk to? Like, this is the stuff where $1,000, couple of $1,000 doing all your estate planning documents, your will, your power of attorney, all that stuff. It can
really
save
important.
so much headaches.
And on there, which we didn't
So
touch
many
on too
headaches.
much last time, is your superannuation nomination or reversionary pensions, because with the super fund provider you're with, there is an additional nomination that by default that money might sit outside your will. And so it's important to make sure that that is valid, particularly when we were a couple and now there's only one of us left. How is that going to impact things? Do we want that to be the case? When do we bring in the power of attorney? Maybe some planning meetings that we touched on last time. When do they need to be across your whole affairs? Hey, by the way, I've got this account here and I do that there, and I look after the finances, and in case I'm not here, then mum might not be able to do this stuff or dad might not be able to do this, so it's important you understand how this fits into the picture. And then also there's, I suppose, a flow-on effect of that, of the tax implications, as you said, blended families, and also, whether we like it or not, aged care planning, but also Centrelink implications. I've seen many a situation where we're a couple, we're together, one of us passed and we're on the age pension, we're very comfortable, we've got $300,000 or $400,000 in pension phase, and we're a couple, we're on full pensions, and one of the members passes away. We now go to a Centrelink test as a single versus a couple, and our pension is drastically reduced, and that causes stress. In some cases, you've lost the pension completely because we're a single now. Perhaps there could have or should have been some proactive planning or gifting or making certain assets go in certain ways to reduce that impact. It's important to make sure that A, it's up to date, but also we're often bringing someone into the fold as part of those discussions.
Just on the, I think for the next moment of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to assume that you are completely self-funded in your mid to late 70s, okay?
Yep.
So you're completely self-funded, money isn't your problem, and you need to really start to work out, well, when you check out, if it's in 15 or 20 years or 5 years, what are you going to do with your money? And the reason I wanted to say that we're assuming you're completely self-funded, there are no issues with gifting and Centrelink. So the question is, if you do have more money than God and you're in your 70s or 80s or 90s or 60s, at any of these ages where you have more money than God and you will not ever be reliant on Centrelink, what's your giving plan going to be in terms of inheritances? Now, an inheritance by definition is received when someone dies, so we'll call it an early inheritance. Are you helping people out before you die? Because at the end of the day, if you give money to somebody, or often when wills get disputed, it's like, oh, I want that, or you shouldn't have that. The best time to ask someone about their wishes, about their will, if you've got a problem with it, is probably before they die and before you die. So my challenge would be, in this situation, sit down with your adult children, if you have them, and say, hey, everyone, just letting you all know now, when we check out, or I check out, if you're a widow or a widower and, you're by yourself, I'm giving 20% of my money to this charity here. Do you have a problem with that? Let me know right now. You guys can have the rest, but I'm just letting you know. So I think that's the dance of, and maybe start to give some of your money away now to charity while you're alive, so you can see and feel the benefit today. So, for example, if you were going to, when you die, give 20% of your net worth to a charity, well, let's make a number up. You might have $2 million. We'll call it $400,000, right? You got $400,000 that when you die of your net worth, you're going to give it to charity.
Yep.
The charity probably would like that money now, not in 10 years. So all I'm saying is, can you start to give money a higher amount monthly now? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it's a conversation. I mean, in terms of that, most of my clientele is in that space, 60, 70, self-funded and having these conversations.
I think the technical term is more money than God.
Yeah. Strong financial independence.
Yes.
But also, and that's where we do projection and go, hey, you're not spending this money in your lifetime. You're going to pass this on. How do we eliminate the different tax headaches but simplify affairs? But yeah, definitely the charity, and that might line up well with the tax headache. Hey, we need to tie up this rental property. You're going to make a $300,000 gain and have to pay tax on that. If you give away $250,000, you sell it for $1.2 million. You give away $250,000, the tax headache's gone because you're that donation. We can claim and eliminate that. The proceeds, split that half with the two adult kids today. You're 77, they're 48, still with a mortgage to pay. That's going to sit in your bank account earning 3 or 4% interest, and you have to pay tax on it because we can't get into super. They're paying the bank 6% interest on their mortgage and can't afford holidays with their kids because they don't have the cash to do that.
Okay, so that's an interesting point. If we drill down on that, if you do have surplus cash and you do want to help your adult kids out and they do have a mortgage, I think it is fair game to say, hey guys, we will help you out. We'll go to the extreme scenario. Your mum and dad or me, or your mum or me, we want to pay your mortgage off. We're in a really good financial position. We'll pay you and your brother or the two siblings. We're going to clear everyone's mortgage. However, there's a proviso here. We need you to be salary sacrificing to super the half of what your mortgage repayment was, whatever, because you're doing it so there can be some help for if they've got young kids and a bit of we can breathe a little bit with
Not
the
so
soccer
you retire
registration.
At 48 and
But it could be, or if you really want to help your kids out, you do it the other way, potentially, where you gift them cash into their super fund each year and they claim it on tax as a concessional contribution for them, so that reduces their tax each year.
Yeah, well, I did that last few weeks for a few clients,
And So you are helping your adult kids. You're getting some money off your table now because you know that you will have to one day. You're putting it into your son or daughter's super account. You're putting 20 grand a year. They'll claim it on tax as their own personal contribution.
Yep.
It could be a win-win.
And that's that proactiveness.
Or if you've raised kids that aren't entitled brats, you can go, yeah, we're paying off your mortgage. We know that you're not you're staying out of consumer debt. You're not buying Gucci bags tomorrow. Or you're putting money into investment bonds for grandkids.
Yeah. So, and that's where we probably do, again, while there's, I don't know, less of the moving into your own super at 78 versus at 58, there's a lot of that, okay, we're now in a position where we've done our active retirement, we've spent the money we're going to spend. We know we're not going to run out of this in the next 15 years. We want to make sure you're looked after, I don't know, if aged care facilities need to be paid for, et cetera, but this cream on the top, how do you want to best utilise that? And some of those items we've discussed today are part of those planning. And I think the joy that I can give when I'm saying to someone, you can afford to give your kid this or help the grandkid with that, and then they get to actually go in and do it rather than, I know it's going to be in the will in how many years' time. They're not there to see that benefit of those funds.
Or if you want to help the grandkids now and you don't want to just gift a lump of cash because for whatever reason, you can say to their parents or the grandkids, hey, if you want to do insert hobby here, we'll pay for it. There's someone in my extended world where she's in year 1 or 2 now, and they were struggling a bit. And I said to her, for Christmas, one of my cousins gave her a little keyboard for Christmas. I gave her 3 months of piano lessons locally in Newcastle.
Yep.
And I said to this little girl, I said, hey, I will pay your piano lessons as long as you want to and you keep going.
Keep going, yeah.
You just need to ask me nicely each. And now, so at start of each school term, the piano teacher sends me the invoice and I'm paying her piano lessons. It's $400 a quarter or a term. Adds up if you've got a young family. So you can do that with your niece and nephews, even if you're my age or other family friends or your grandkids.
And see that immediate impact and that power of that money.
So you can be like, I'm going to take you and the cool thing is she sends me videos and the piano teacher sends videos of Melissa learning songs and it's just really cool.
Yeah, it's cool, yeah.
I've committed as long as she's wants to do piano until she's 18, I'll fund it. I don't care.
Did you sign the contract that you get a share of extra revenue if she goes in to be a full-time musician?
That's right. Yeah. I'm the manager if you become a whatever. But so as a 70-year-old with surplus money for the grandkids thing, you can be like, yep, I'll pay for your piano lessons. And what we do, I pick you up from school. I drive you to piano lessons. We go get a milkshake after. Drop you home.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your gift to, I don't know, I'm just trying to think outside the box that in the back of your mind, you do want to, and you do know that one day your family will get your wealth if you decide to do that. If you decide to spend it all on yourself as well, knock yourself out.
Go for it.
There is just that expectation that you tell your adult children what you are planning to do with your wealth now and if you check out.
Agreed.
And it's similar like with my will. You know, I'm not in my 70s. I didn't send a copy to my mum, my dad and my sister and my executor. I sent them an email. Hey, friends, my will's at Aubrey Brown at Tuggerah. 10% of my estate's going to this charity here. The kids are going to get a couple $100,000 each if they're not on drugs and all that stuff, and it's to go on trust until they're 30. The rest will be split 50-50 between mum and dad and my sister. If you've got a problem now with what I've laid out, let me know.
Let me know, yeah.
Because I'll talk about it. If there's a compelling reason where whatever, I'll listen. But here's your chance because if I die, you know, not only have got my assets, there's a big life insurance policy connected to my disability policy. So there's real money on the table if I check out. And I've just made sure it's very clear what happens when I do check out. And that's not saying, we're saying if you're in your 70s, get ready to check out. This is just best practice. I did that in my late 30s as best practice. But the older we get, statistically, the sooner we're going to die. And we just have to live in reality.
Be proactive and get things set up efficiently. And also the executive who's going to be managing those affairs. And the practicality at some point of, is there a list of your bank accounts and your logons and your passwords and that kind of kit of documents, or is there a professional who's across your financial situation to know where those life policies are and those super statements and these trust deed and those kind of things that may be needed at a time in the future.
And I will maybe end on this because we did talk about the craziness, and it is a bit psychological. But if you're in your 70s, you've managed to pay off the house, life's pretty good financially, you'd have lots of clients from middle Australia that have got a good super amount and it's going to outlast them. It's almost like at the start of this series on the Money, Money, Money podcast, we did an episode called Money in Your 20s.
Yep.
And one of the points was, you've 100%, you've got to have an eye on the future of your career and future you, but have fun in your 20s. Like, go and do that travel. Don't do it with credit card debts and all that, but have fun. And I really want to challenge people in their 70s, do something that you've never done for the first time. So just at the time of recording, we're recording late June. I went to Bali for a week. I planned that. I was going to do some work over there. I told my family, hey, I'm going to Bali if anyone wants to join. Mum and Dad didn't have their passports, but to their credit, they got their passports because they were never going to go overseas again.
Wasn't on their radar.
And Dad just turned 71. We're in Bali for his birthday. My sister came. The grandkids were there. It was an awesome family holiday. They could have in their 70s, because money wasn't their problem. It was that mindset, we don't want to have to get a passport and travel. But
factor or
they had a great time.
Yeah.
Like, have fun. And you can spend a couple of grand and go on a fun experience. And we actually were joking with my dad because, Dad, he's got his passport now and we're calling him the travel blogger.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, I might check out Thailand. Always wanted to check out Thailand. And they did Norfolk Island a couple of months ago, and Dad's, talk about marketing and the type of demographic that reads. Anyway, he's like, we saw a discount for a holiday in the in the paper or something, and we did that, and have fun. You've got the money. You've got to get over the psychological thing of you've got money. If you spend $5,000 on a holiday once a year, it might not move the needle. If you can do it, enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, and if you can do it, depending on what I wouldn't expect Mum and Dad to pay for me, my sister, her kids on the big family holiday. You might be in a position that you can afford to take, 10 people to Fiji or Bali or whatever and have a good family holiday. But if not, can you throw it out there? Hey guys, let's organise a family holiday.
We're going to be here
at this time. If you want to join us, it would be cool. And, one of the nights, my sister and her husband, they went on a date night, and the kids were either going to stay, they do what they want when they're teenagers. I got back from the hotel one night. Because I hired a scooter, scooting up into the hotel because I thought, Mum and Dad are at the hotel because the kids had their own room.
Yeah.
And I went and met with a friend who lived in Bali. So I'm rocking back up to the hotel and the kids are walking back in. And I'm like, go and walk about. But all that to say, it could be if you're in your 70s and you do have grandkids and you're like, look, we're going to insert Fiji, Bali or whatever this date.
Here,
if you want to come over, have a bit of a family holiday and you want to do a couple of date nights, we can watch the kids on I don't know, just have fun. You've worked so bloody hard for your money. Enjoy it. Buy experiences.
Yeah, going to get out there and enjoy it. And you're as young as you're ever going to be, so go out and take that trip, do that thing, join that social club you've been meaning to.
Yep.
And
do something for the first time. I did that recently and, I'm 40. I started pickleball. like it was scary, rocked up. I didn't know anyone, joined the social comp, and
Yeah, cool.
it's great. Just meet lots of people and, yeah.
Keep yourself active and get involved, and that social side of also is
Got
really
to keep
key.
moving. Yeah, 100%. Well, we might leave it there. Should we recap the 70s? Point 1, optimise government entitlements. You know, we talked about gifting, annuities, funeral bonds, the senior health care card, if not age pension. Point 2, manage pensions. So understand that minimum starting at 5% and it increases each year. Point 3, Martin, you talked about this consolidation and simplify. Let's get this tight. Let's
Tidy
get this
up some accounts.
mess.
Tidy up some
Piss
loose
the IAG
ends.
shares off and the Telstra shares that you got sold.
That kind of credit card you had for all these years, you don't ever use anymore. It's having been an executor for family members, and you have to trot around all the banks and fill in these forms to close that account that's not being used. Tidy up those loose ends.
Number 4, consider a recontribution strategy. Mainly around moving the tax components around for...
and or just shuffling any extra money in before the age of 75 or over 75 if it's a downsizer.
And number 5, which we've just harped on about, check your estate planning, make sure that's reviewed, sorted. And I think number 6, have fun.
Have fun.
Can't take it with you. Be clear with what you want to do. Live with intention. If you haven't been to a doctor in the last year or 2, please go to your doctor. Tell them, I just want an annual checkup. Haven't been. They may need to put a rubber glove on. It's okay. You'll survive. Just tell the doctor you can do that, but no eye contact.
On that note.
On that note, thank you so much for listening today. If you have found this beneficial, thank you so much for sharing it with your friends and family member. What do you think in the comments? Let us know. My name's Glen James, joined by
Martin McGrath.
And this was Retire Right. Bye.
See ya.
Any advice is general financial advice only, which does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Because of that, you should consider if the advice is appropriate to you and your needs before acting on the information. If you do choose to buy a financial product, read the Product Disclosure Statement, PDS, and Target Market Determination, TMD, and obtain appropriate financial advice tailored to your needs. Simo Interactive, Pty Ltd, and Glen James are authorised representatives of Money Sherpa Pty Ltd, which holds Financial Services Licence 451289. Martin McGrath, Financial Edge Group, and its employed financial advisors are authorised representatives of Synchron Advice, AFSL 243313. Opinions or comments from any guest on the podcast are theirs, and not those of the hosts, the publisher, or their respective licence holders.